Under 900 grams, a 2015 Dogma F8 frame now goes for less than a new aluminum bike. One frame here has the left side shaped differently from the right. Nobody copied it. 8 bikes, 10 years old, faster than new. Giant TCR Advanced SL number 8. Around 800 grams for the frame, and it sold for a fraction of what its Italian and American rivals charged. The Giant TCR Advanced SL from 2016 solved a problem most brands refuse to address, delivering professional-level performance without the professional-level markup. Giant builds carbon frames at a scale nobody else matches, supplying raw carbon and finished frames to other brands in the industry, as well as its own lineup. And that manufacturing volume translated directly into the TCR's advanced SL-grade carbon, stiff at the bottom bracket for power transfer, compliant at the seat post junction for all-day comfort. Team Giant Alpecin raced the same frame on flat stages and mountain finishes in the same Grand Tour, with no bike swaps required between terrains that usually demand 2 different machines built for 2 different jobs. The TCR became the quiet rider's choice, the bike people bought when they cared about the ride more than the logo on the down tube. It never carried the marketing budget of the Italian Marquess or the wind tunnel mystique of the American Aero brands. And that low profile became part of its appeal among riders who wanted performance without the theater attached to it. Used examples from 2016 now show up for under $1,000, a fraction of what the frame cost when it was raced at the sport's highest level under a professional contract. That kind of value forced a specific question. If the engineering is this good at this price, why pay more? The next bike answered that question with a frame weight that stunned the industry. Cannondale Super 6 Evo High-Mod number 7, 695 grams. That was the claimed frame weight in 2015, making the Cannondale Super 6 Evo High-Mod one of the lightest production road frames ever sold to the public. Cannondale's Ballistec High-Mod, carbon-cut grams without giving up the bottom bracket stiffness that sprinters demand in the closing meters of a race. Multiple Grand Tour contenders raced this frame across several seasons, trusting it on both the flats and the high mountains. The cult status came from something harder to quantify than a scale reading: balance. The Super 6 rode in a composed, neutral way that heavier aero bikes and stiffer race machines simply could not match, especially over long, rough stages where a twitchy frame wears a rider down long before the finish line. Amateur racers and weekend riders adopted the same reputation, treating the frame as proof that a lightweight climbing bike did not have to feel fragile or nervous at speed. That composure pushed a rival German brand to rethink what fast really meant when not every road came with a tailwind. Canyon Aeroad CF SLX number 6, 40% less. That is roughly what the Canyon Aeroad CF SLX cost, compared to equivalently spec'd bikes from the established brands back in 2015. Canyon's direct-to-consumer model stripped away dealer margins and distributor fees entirely. A box shipped from Koblenz, Germany, straight to the doorstep, skipping every middleman that usually adds cost along the way. The Aeroad's tube profiles came out of hundreds of wind tunnel hours, saving a claimed double-digit number of watts over a round tube frame at race speeds, a difference that matters enormously in a sprint finish decided by fractions of a second. Movistar's squad raced it across Grand Tours and Monument Classics, proving the frame was not just affordable, it was competitive at the sport's highest level, going shoulder to shoulder with bikes that cost far more and carried far bigger marketing budgets behind them. The Aeroad changed the conversation. Paying full retail for a frame that performed identically stopped feeling like a premium and started feeling like a tax. Online forums and comparison reviews from the period repeatedly pointed back to the same conclusion, that the gap between Canyon and its more expensive rivals had less to do with engineering and more to do with distribution costs the rider never actually benefited from. That pressure forced even the most established brands to justify every dollar of their pricing, and one American company responded not by cutting prices, but by packing more technology into a single frame than anyone had attempted before. Trek Madone 9 Series. Number 5. Zero exposed cables. The 2016 Trek Madone 9 Series hid everything. Full internal routing, integrated brakes, a cockpit designed as a single aerodynamic unit rather than a collection of separate parts. Trek started with a problem that had haunted every aero road bike of its era. Stiffness and comfort could not coexist on the same frame. The answer was ISO speed, a decoupler at the seat tube junction that let the seat tube flex independently from the top tube and seat stays. Trek claimed up to 19 millimeters of vertical compliance without any measurable loss in pedaling stiffness, a combination that had not existed on a race bike before. Fabian Cancellara, in his final professional season, raced the Madone 9 across the cobbled classics, including Paris-Roubaix, where reviving 5 hours on paving stones demands a bike that absorbs punishment without going soft under power. The Madone proved that an aero bike and an endurance bike could, for the first time, be the same machine. The Madone 9 also carried a reputation for durability that outlasted its racing career. Riders who bought used frames years later reported the same composed ride quality Cancellara described from inside the peloton, a rare case of a marketing claim holding up under everyday ownership rather than fading once the warranty ended. Used examples now sit between $1,200 and $2,000 for a frame and group set combination that retailed for more than triple that when new. Whether pure climbing performance could come even lighter than this was still an open question. The next bike answered it by stripping away every gram it could find. 4 down, 4 to go. And the bikes from here only get more interesting. If this kind of deep dive is useful, subscribing means catching the next one the day it drops. Cervelo R5 number 4, under 780 grams. The 2015 Cervelo R5 was built around a single obsession: light enough to climb, stiff enough not to waste a single watt doing it. Cervelo's squoval tube profiles, squared off ovals rather than round or teardrop shapes, delivered a stiffness to weight ratio that competing tube designs simply could not match at the same weight. The R5 showed up under climbers and stage racers who needed a frame that could accelerate on steep gradients without turning to jelly in a sprint finish at the bottom of a descent. The reason it still holds up a decade later is the geometry: not too aggressive, not too relaxed, sitting right in the modern sweet spot that most brands only arrived at years later after a great deal of trial and error on their own frames. Cervelo built its entire reputation on that kind of restraint, favoring proven aerodynamic and structural principles over trend chasing, and the R5 became the clearest example of that philosophy applied to a pure climbing bike. That versatility made the next bike's achievement even more remarkable: a frame just as light that refused to sacrifice a single thing to get there. Now, into the top 3. Specialized S-Works Tarmac number 3, 733 grams. The 2015 Specialized S-Works Tarmac carried a frame weight that competitive bikes are still trying to match a decade later. Specialized's approach was called Rider First Engineered, meaning each frame size received its own carbon layup, its own tube diameters, and its own wall thicknesses, so a size 49 69 and a size 61 performed identically relative to the rider sitting on top of them. That was not marketing language. It was a genuine engineering shift that most rival brands only started adopting years afterward, once the results became impossible to ignore. Peter Sagan raced the tarmac to sprint victories and classics wins, proving the frame handled explosive power without complaint. At the same time, Grand Tour climbers trusted the same platform on mountain stages that lasted 6 hours or more. The Tarmac became the all-rounder benchmark, the frame every competing brand's new release got measured against for years afterward, right down to the marketing language other companies started borrowing to describe their own size-specific engineering. On the used market, clean 2015 examples now sell for between $1,500 and $2,500 depending on the group set attached. That is striking because a brand new mid-range carbon frame with less refined engineering costs roughly the same amount today without offering the same proven race pedigree. An all-rounder, though, is only one approach to building a fast bike. And the next frame on this list traded that balance for something stranger and far harder to replicate. Bianchi Ultra XR4 No. 2, a vibration-damping material developed for aerospace. That is what sits inside the carbon layup of the 2016 Bianchi Ultra XR4. The material is called countervail, created by Materials Sciences Corporation, and Bianchi integrated it directly into the frame's carbon matrix rather than bolting on a separate mechanical decoupler. The motivation was a complaint as old as carbon itself. Stiffness makes a bike fast, but it also sends every crack and ripple in the road straight into the rider's hands and spine over the course of a long ride. Most brands addressed that problem with frame geometry or dedicated flex zones built into the tubing. Bianchi's answer was to engineer vibration cancellation directly into the material. The claimed result was up to 80% reduction in road vibration, without any measurable loss in lateral stiffness where it mattered most. Professional teams raced the Ultra XR4 across cobblestones and mountain finishes alike, and riders described it as the frame that felt like bending the rules, offering race bike stiffness alongside endurance bike comfort in a way that most manufacturers insisted was not possible in a single design. In Celeste Green, a shade tied to Bianchi's identity for more than a century, it also became one of the most instantly recognizable frames on any group ride, drawing attention long after its racing career had ended. Used examples from 2016 now appear between $1,000 and $1,800, and for riders who value comfort alongside speed, nothing from that era comes especially close. All of which brings this list to the frame that opened the intro, the one with two different sides. Pinarello Dogma F8 No. 1, two different sides, literally. The 2015 Pinarello Dogma F8 used an asymmetric frame design, where the left side of the frame was shaped differently from the right side. The reason was the drivetrain. A bicycle's chain, cassette, and crankset all sit on the right side, creating uneven forces that a symmetric frame can only absorb, never actually correct. Pinarello's solution was to compensate at the source, using a thicker carbon layup and different tube profiles on the drive side, and thinner, lighter tubing on the non-drive side. The result was a frame that tracked straighter under full power than anything that had come before it. Chris Froome rode the Dogma F8 to overall victory at the Tour de France in 2015 and again in 2016, making Team Sky's standard-issue frame the most successful Grand Tour bike of its generation. The F8 came in under 900 grams, met every aerodynamic target Pinarello had set for it, and handled with a precision that professional riders described in terms usually reserved for time trial machines rather than everyday road bikes. Nobody copied the asymmetric design to the same degree. Other brands experimented with minor layup differences between the drive and non-drive sides, but none went as far as building visibly different tube shapes directly into the mold, and none matched the results on the road that Team Sky produced across 2 consecutive Tour de France wins. The Dogma F8 proved that a 10-year-old idea can still be the most advanced frame in any room, and at used prices between $1,000 and $2,000, it might also be the smartest purchase on this entire list. 8 frames, all roughly a decade old, all still capable of matching bikes that cost 3 or 4 times as much brand new. From the Giant TCR's relentless value to the Pinarello Dogma's asymmetric engineering, these bikes represent a window in road cycling, where design ambition outpaced the incremental gains that followed in later years. Each one solved a different problem: weight, cost, comfort, aerodynamics, or raw stiffness. And each solution was proven under professional racing conditions before it ever reached a showroom floor. The used market has made every single one of them more accessible than ever before, often at a fraction of what teams and sponsors originally paid to develop and race them. Road cycling technology hit a plateau the industry does not talk about openly. Frame weights stopped dropping in any meaningful way once manufacturers ran up against the practical limits of carbon layup and structural safety. Aerodynamic gains shrank down to single-digit watts between generations of the same model, the kind of improvement that shows up on a spreadsheet, but rarely changes how a bike feels underneath a rider. The meaningful differences between a 2015 flagship and a 2026 flagship are largely group-set electronics and disc brake integration, neither of which actually lives in the frame itself. That is why these bikes still work today. The carbon did not expire. The geometry did not become wrong overnight. The engineering that won Grand Tours a decade ago still wins club races and charity rides today. The only thing that changed was the price, and it changed entirely in the buyer's favor. If this breakdown helped narrow down a used bike search, subscribing is the best way to catch what comes next. The next video covers how to inspect a decade-old carbon frame before handing over any money, cracks, repairs, and the red flags that sellers will not mention on their own. Script checklist. Word count of the intro: 40 open loop fact. One frame in this list has the left side shaped differently from the right, and nobody else copied it. Where it resolves: Pinarello Dogma F8, paragraph 1, with the full explanation of the asymmetric frame design, and again in paragraph 3, where the script confirms nobody else copied the asymmetric design to the same degree. Total script word count: approximately 2,540 words.